This podcast is more confirmation that this movie exists for better or worse. Tonight we discuss New Mutants at last.
Danny, you're a very uncommon girl. Do you know what mutants are? We can help you get better. You're in a safe place now.
I saw something I don't think she wanted me to see. I don't think we're here to get better.
This isn't a hospital. It's a cage.
The New Mutants.
This is the Superhero Pantheon. On this podcast, we take one superhero film a week and decide whether it should be in the Pantheon, the pile of shame, or somewhere in between. My name is Jerome You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps through the real world. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5 star review so as to help people discover the show and the great work that the folks at the real world are doing. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you can do so by following us on Twitter at Hero Pantheon. My co-host for this week and every week will be Brian DeBrain. He can be found on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. Brian, this is a movie that has had 5 release dates. And it finally came out amidst a worldwide pandemic. Brian, I don't know if we have ever talked about a more cursed film than this one, but let me posit this to you, Mr. DeBrain. The question is, does this movie work as a commentary on the way we do not properly staff our mental health facilities?
Probably, because it looked like no one was running the maintenance. It looked like no one was cooking their food. All of a sudden, there was just food cooked for them. All of a sudden, someone's running the boiler. Someone's like cleaning their clothes. I don't know what's going on, but apparently this is supposed to be like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for the Marvel kids, right? And it totally just doesn't work at all. And this was such a bore to sit through the second time around. The first time I sat through this movie, I was at a drive-in with my buddy, and 5 minutes before the movie started, we read that Chadwick Boseman died. So that really brought down the mood to a really shitty movie anyway. And once we watched the movie, we were just like, what the fuck are we watching here? And I'm watching this again, and I watched this movie again on my laptop, and I try to give it the benefit of the doubt. And my God, this movie is just, oh man, there's so much going on with this movie. It's terrible performances, a terrible plot, and I think the Demon Bear is probably one of the worst plot devices. I know it's from the comics, but just because, it's from the comics does not mean it translates well in movies. And this is one of those cases where a demon bear is like the villain of the movie, and it's just fucking stupid. So I hate to say that, but it seems so stupid watching this the second time around, because it's just like, that's it. It's a demon bear, and it's just changing into these different forms, and there's really no explanation as to what's coming from. And then we're just supposed to assume that this one lady's in charge of 5 people in a hospital that can easily overpower her. I don't know what's going on, and something about a dragon that appears on this Anna Taylor-Joy's shoulder that I don't understand. I don't know what's going on.
It is directly a callback to the comic books, to reference the magic dragon. That is a reference to the comic books, but you would not know it based on watching this movie. And so I will say that I watched this movie one time, and normally for Superhero Pantheon we have a rule where we do not evaluate a movie for the Pantheon until at least a year after. However, I have made the executive decision that I am not watching this movie twice. I'm watching this movie one time, I'm talking about it, and then I will never discuss this movie ever again. So that is why we are reviewing this movie in March of 2021, even though it just came out in August of 2020. As I mentioned, this is a cursed movie. And Brian, I cannot believe that this movie was supposed to come out in 2018, just 1 year after Logan. This movie was supposed to come out. But at first it was delayed to February 19th of 2019 to conduct reshoots. Later, it was pushed back to August the 2nd, 2019, while Disney finalized the purchase of Fox. The film was pushed back to April of 2020 to make room for the release of X-Men Dark Phoenix. Of course, Brian, just a month before this movie was finally slated to come out, we were all sent into lockdown. On March 12, 2020, it was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. May 13th, 2020, 20th Century Studios / Disney finally decided to put this thing out of its misery by releasing it on August the 28th, even though it was during the pandemic. So this and Tenet were basically the two biggest movie releases of the summer in theaters, and that is absolutely hilarious to me. I do not have the box office numbers, but I guess it did okay relative to what a movie during a pandemic should do. But yeah, this movie does not have good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. This movie basically is the ender to the X-Men franchise, as incredible as that seems. But yeah, this is a cursed movie, Brian.
Yeah, we were talking about this at the start of this podcast, like back in 2018. We were even talking about it before, like, we even recorded our first episode. Like, we were planning, like, to review this on one of the earlier episodes around, like, April when we, when it was supposed to come out. And we were just making fun of it throughout the whole time. And here we are, finally, after, like, 3 years of buildup, we're finally reviewing this movie. And I joked this movie would never, ever come out. And lo and behold, I was sitting in a drive-in theater in 2020 based on the circumstances, and I watched this movie. And my God, I was one of those people on August 28th, man. But yeah, I just can't believe that it took 3 years of hype from us, and we finally got the movie. I just couldn't believe it came out. I was on the camp that it was never going to come out, and here we are. And it is what it is, I guess. I mean, at least it made some money back. I know the cast really, really didn't want to promote this movie because, like, based on some of the stuff on the YouTube videos from back in August, I feel bad for Haley Williams because she was just like the most positive one, but knowing it was shit, she was just kind of like doing it with a smile. So good for her because, goddamn, like to do press for this movie would just feel so embarrassing, especially like Josh Boone, who's been sitting on this movie for 3 years, and you would think with 3 years they would have like improved some of the movie, but they didn't. They just let it sit there, and no one really gave a shit. I guess I don't know because you had so much time to fix this, and maybe even with like the time they had, they couldn't have fixed this because like the structure of it all is just not really good at all. So I don't know. At least they made some money back, I guess.
So I think that Josh Boone is a cursed filmmaker as well, because Brian, I don't know if you realize this, but he is an executive producer and director of 2 episodes of The Stand, the 2020 reboot of that Stephen King property that is currently on Paramount Plus the entire run. Can you imagine, Brian, like he's got this movie in the can and it's finally going to come out. The pandemic delays this. He's working on a project literally about a pandemic that kills 99% of people. And that project also gets delayed because of the pandemic. If Josh Boone were anybody, if Josh Boone was someone I respected as a creator, I would feel bad for him. But he kind of sucks. So I don't feel sorry for him. But it is interesting to point out, he originally conceived of this as the first of a trilogy. The second film was going to be an alien invasion with the mutant warlock, and then the third and final installment to be a supernatural apocalyptic horror movie based on the X-Men comic Inferno, where demons invade the Earth and magic plays a major role. He also was, of course, the person who found this very stressful and felt a bit neutered because he had to tone the film down from his original full horror ideas. I don't even necessarily know what that means, but it's one of those things where we know that 20th Century Fox has a very bad history with directors, with Fantastic Four and Josh Trank, X-Men Origins Wolverine, that the director of that being basically removed and being replaced by Richard Donner. And there were even rumors that this movie was going to be reshot based on feedback from test audiences to make it scarier. The reshoots were repeatedly pushed back until ultimately being canceled by March 2020. The reported reasons for the cancellation offer: some trade publications report the film was deemed satisfactory by Disney, i.e., they just want to get rid of it and release it and never speak of it again. Many people, including director Josh Boone, claim the cast had visibly aged after 2 years and reshoots were no longer feasible. And I am sure that trying to get Anya Taylor-Joy to come back for this would have been impossible because she has moved on to bigger and better things. And poor Maisie Williams, I can imagine that being associated with Game of Thrones, that would age you a couple years, especially with how that series ended.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate because, like I said, she was so positive in all the interviews she did for the press in this movie, Macy Williams, and then unfortunately it didn't turn out well. But at least she's like very positive about it, and like she even jokes about like she quote tweets like some of the bad reviews back in August, and she was like, "Go see the New Mutants now in theaters." So it is what it is, man. At least she's like upbeat about it and can look back and kind of laugh at it. But some people, I don't know, will look back at this in their career and kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. Because as much as we love Anya Taylor-Joy in like other roles now, like this is one of the worst roles she's ever done. And I've heard mixed things about this. It's like, oh, she's the best part of this movie. But yeah, just a terrible accent can really hinder a performance. And this is one of those things where it just completely just takes the performance out the window and just like you can't take any of it seriously, and it's unfortunate because she was directed that way. But again, it is what it is because Josh Boone doesn't seem to know how to direct actors well. So yeah, that's kind of what you get with this, and it's everyone kind of trying to figure out their motivations and all that kind of thing on their own, and you can kind of tell like the direction on the characters in this movie is not really well done, and that's why we got like this weird accent from Anya Taylor-Joy that just doesn't work. But it is what it is, man. At least she kind of moved on from it, and now she's kicking ass on Netflix and whatever project she wants pretty much right now because she's kind of like not a star level performer, but like right now she's on the way up based on her trajectory. And I still kind of want to watch the chess movie miniseries on Netflix. I am a fan of Searching for Bobby Fischer when I was younger, so that's kind of why I made that joke last week, and I was kind of serious about it.
Anya Taylor-Joy is great. The fact that she was and I know the Golden Globes mean absolutely nothing, but she did win a Golden Globe for her role on The Queen's Gambit, which is well earned and well deserved. She is excellent in that. She is also excellent in a lot of movies that she has been in, including the movie Glass, which we talked about last year, and Split was really the first time that I saw her. I know that she was also in The Witch, and she has also been in Peaky Blinders as well. So she's been everywhere lately, and I can only imagine that this is going to continue. Basically, she plays a very similarly powered person. In Glass, she played a character with a personal connection to one of the three superpowered individuals locked in a facility with a mysterious female doctor supposedly trying to help and guide them, but is revealed later in each film to have more sinister motivations. I think that's pretty funny that both of the superhero movies that Anya Taylor-Joy has technically been involved in both involve understaffed institutions, which it's pretty amusing to me. So apparently John Hamm was cast to portray Nathaniel Essex slash Mr. Sinister. This would have been his second time in a movie about an institution, as he played a minor role in the movie Sucker Punch, which otherwise does not exist. He apparently even filmed scenes for the role, but it was cut out of the film as a result of an extensive rumored reshoot process, and I would imagine that at a certain point they just decided to keep Mr. Sinister for whatever the MCU is eventually going to do with him. So somewhere out there, Brian, there may be footage of John Hamm as Mr. Sinister, and I desperately want to see this.
Oh, it will get on YouTube in about 5 years. Usually that's how it works. Like, casting audition tapes, that's how we got the Nicolas Cage footage as Superman. So you also forgot to point out Sarah Polley, right? She is the Nurse Ratched of the Glass movie. She's also playing Nurse Ratched in the Nurse Ratched show, right? So it all kind of comes together, how it all comes together in our universe. So weird stuff like that. But yeah, I just can't believe like there's this new age thing about doing like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but in the modern era, and people are just trying to do it. But they seem to be focusing on the whole Nurse Ratched thing, and it's more than that. It's not just about a really evil woman in charge of the mental asylum. It's about the patients, you know. So I don't know what this obsession is about this. We got to recreate Nurse Ratched in the modern era, and they're like trying like two or three different times. So it's just kind of weird that that's kind of coming back now. But things come back.
I mean, Brian, it's about mining IP. That's what they're doing, and that's what these streaming services are trying to do, and that's how they're trying to get people put their money up because that's how you do it with familiar IP. And this is something that isn't going to go away anytime soon, and you're going to see all of your favorite streaming services do this. I mean, Disney does this with Star Wars and the MCU, and they're going to be doing it with their Pixar projects. Paramount Plus is doing it with they're literally bringing back the Rugrats in this awful CG cartoon that is, I mean, it might be good, it might be bad, but like the Rugrats were 30 years ago at this point. Like, how many people care about the Rugrats at this point? And it's something that we're going to be talking a lot about over the next few years and what value there is to mining this IP. So, Brian, there was a very confusing moment in this movie when they were using footage from the movie Logan. It is unclear when New Mutants takes place, but we do know that Logan is happening in the near future. Brian, I don't understand how this works.
Listen, with the whole Nathaniel X's thing as well, it's like they shot the footage, yes, but they just want nothing to do with it. So why even like put it in a final cut and edit it and final, color correct and everything, all that stuff? Just why even do it? So like this idea that they wanted to connect it to the X-Men universe. Once they had the sale, I was just thinking like, why even connect anything at all if the universe is dead? So just end it. And if you want to say it takes place before Logan, I guess sure, why not? I mean, they just changed the timeline in that universe so many times anyway. Hell, he make Deadpool is the reason why is that the universe changed and everything because that's kind of what it was by the end of it. So I don't know. Just I'm glad that this universe is dead and gone and buried, even though we got Quicksilver back in WandaVision. Technically not. I don't know, but yeah, I'm just glad the X-Men franchise is dead. And in my mind, it ends with Logan, and this is kind of like I don't know a one-shot comic that is loosely related that kind of failed. That's kind of how I played in my mind, and I kind of just put it in the back of my mind. And Logan is the definitive last chapter of the X-Men franchise that we know and love.
You say that, Brian, but do you not remember the post-credit scene from X-Men Apocalypse? Because I do.
I'm trying not to. I want to leave the X-Men on a high note, and we can't just have it Logan just be retconned as the last chapter. But
Well, Brian, I'm here to tell you that the Essex Corporation was teased in that post-credit sequence.
I know. And Essex Corporation should have been more prominent, except we had the same director of the X-Men movies rehash a bunch of storylines that didn't work before. Yeah, I know. Instead of moving in the future of the X-Men, he went back, and yeah, I get it. I get it, and it's terrible.
All right, let's. I think we've already spent too much time talking about this movie as is. Let's get into the categories. So the heroes, the characters do exist. They are there. Basically, each of the characters is given one characteristics, with almost nothing to develop beyond this. Anya Taylor-Joy as Ileana Rasputin. She is the worst person in the world. She is an asshole, and she's also very racist. This will go down as one of the absolute worst roles of her career, Brian. There's points when she calls Danny Moonstar Pocahontas, makes reference to buffalo wings, and it's unbelievably awful. And I understand you are trying to make Ileana Rasputin an asshole, and I get that. But there are ways of making a character an asshole without also having them be racist. And especially because you want us to ultimately root for this character. Anya Taylor-Joy also has a Russian accent that would make Elizabeth Olsen jealous. And if I never hear a fake Russian accent in a film again, it will be too soon because it is interminable, just the amount that we get in various movies. And I include Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Kenneth Branagh and all of the recent ones that I've heard. I like Anya Taylor-Joy a lot because of the roles that she's done in Glass, in Split, in The Queen's Gambit, even to a certain extent in Emma. This was very bad.
Yeah, like I mentioned, the accent just really kills her right off the bat. And I don't know what her story is still. And even though they try to tell the backstory about how she killed a bunch of men and stuff like that, I still don't know what's going on. And they try to they try to explain it, or they don't explain her powers too well either. So like she can, like you mentioned, the dragon on her shoulders, she can turn her arm into a sword and then open up a portal into a different universe. If she can open up a portal, why is she stuck in the bubble then? Right? I don't know. It's fucking it's ridiculous, man. And just the way that Josh Boone directed these characters is just I don't know. It's just like it's obvious like they didn't have time to develop anything, and he was just like, well, I'll just make a 90-minute movie and make superficial characters and just go from there.
It'd be one thing, and I understand that there are some criticisms of Josh Boone and the way that he behaved, and some of the casting decisions. When it comes to him as a creator between this and The Stand, and I know that every movie and television project has a number of different facets, and there are a lot of moving parts, and you can't blame one person for a particular project's failure. But based off of what I've seen of Josh Boone in these two, and granted, again, it's franchise IP you don't know, but he has exactly the same problem with The Stand as he does here. So I found that to be really fascinating that both of these projects have a lot of characters that are very well known, but they get almost nothing to do, and all of the any positives that come from this are in the performances. So I think the best character in this movie, Brian, and when I say best, you can put that in quotes. Blue Hunt plays Danny Moonstar, who is an indigenous character, and we know she's indigenous because she gets called racist names over and over again, and it's really gross, and it's not something that I appreciated very much. The other issue is that basically Danny Moonstar as a character is defined by the fact that she is indigenous and she is a queer character. Those are the two things that she is known for. And they try to give her some background by having her father die at the beginning, but there's no background to her character beyond those three attributes. And it's really bad. And I think that this is an actor who I would like to see get another crack at this role or get another crack in the MCU because I think she is genuinely good in this role. And any points that the heroes get, a lot of it is going to be because of her and Maisie Williams as Ronnie Sinclair. But I will say that Danny Moonstar, Blue Hunt is trying. The character is just
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that. I it's just frustrating because we don't know what the fuck is going on. So when you try to like get her background, all we know is what happened in the attack and nothing beyond the attack. We don't know any of her life before that, like where the hell she's from. Like it was just some random like town that she was attacked in, and then like she doesn't. They don't even mention like what they say was a tornado, but like I don't know. It's just the fact that there was a lack of background really was just frustrating. Trying to get to know the character when they just keep asking these questions about like her powers and stuff, but nothing really about her background. You know what I mean? Like we got to know a little bit about Macy's Blaze background, like about the priest and everything and stuff like that. But for some reason, just Danny Moonstar was just, yeah, just like based on like the fact that she was, a queer character and the fact that like she's a Native American character, like that's all there is to it. And then the fact that like Ileana's making fun of her for it for no reason at all. It's just like I don't know. It's just like there's these weird character connections that were made, and it's just like what's going on here? Like why? There's just so many whys. It's just so distracting as to getting to know these characters. There's too many whys.
So Charlie Heaton, mostly known, I think, for Stranger Things, is Sam Guthrie. He has an accent. Maisie Williams, who might be the most famous person in this movie, I would say, is Ronnie Sinclair. She is in a relationship. She does wolf stuff, so that's kind of fun. And Henry Zaga, who I completely forgot was in this movie, is Roberto da Costa. At first, I thought he was a worker, but then they make it clear that he is one of the patients, and I was just very confused. I will say, I do want to give the credit to at least some of the performances, but the writing here is just, it's atrocious. And in 90 minutes, it is impossible to get to know six brand new characters on the hero side and be able to invest anything. Their powers are also kept very esoteric until the very end. And it just feels like this movie is kind of lurching from scene to scene. I'm giving this a 3.
I'm gonna give it a 1, and even with Charlie Heaton having his, at least we got to know his background. But it's just so weird that like we got to know his background, but not too much of Danny Moonstar. I still give it a 1 because we just don't care about any of these characters, and it's just so frustrating. You know what I mean? And it's just like we don't like any other positive qualities, and like there's nothing to there's nothing to like about them in a positive way. So by the end of the movie, it's just like, okay, so who are the villains really? Because like I guess the Demon Bear was part of Danny Moonstar, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know. And the fact that like Henry Zaga is just like, I don't know. He's just there, right? I don't know, man. It's just like he's just there, and he's just in the background, and he's got this thing for Ileana, and that's all we know about him too. And all the fact that he just likes girls, right? And that's it. Okay. So yeah, it's just why is Henry Zaga even there? Because it's just like he's there to like girls, and that's it. And then that's all we know about him, and it's frustrating. So all in all, just 1 out of 10 because it's terrible. The way these characters are just written, and the way that we just don't care about him by the end.
So the villains, I think we're going to have the same score on this one. Alice Braga, I think she does an admirable job playing Dr. Reyes. She is apparently the only employee of this hospital. There are no other helpers. We don't know how these people get food because there is an invisible force field around the hospital. She is managing 5 mutants and could easily be overpowered at any time, but is not until the plot calls for it. And then, Brian, why don't you talk about Demon Bear?
Look, it's a part of Danny Moonstar. That's all I could figure out, but I don't know where it comes from, if it's internal, how does it come externally? How is it manifesting itself in a physical form by eating people? What the fuck is going on here? And does the demon bear turn into everyone else's fears? Do the fears that are everyone else is seeing come from Danny Moonstar? How is this all connected? Is the demon bear dead? What the fuck is going on here, man? I'm so frustrated by the end of this movie because I'm just like, so the bear ate the doctor, but then where does the bear come from? So if the bear comes from Danny Moonstar, did Danny Moonstar eat the doctor? Like, what is going on here?
I don't know, Brian. I'll be honest. If you told me that there was a movie with a demon bear in it, I would tell you that I was really excited for that movie. And then to see what becomes of Demon Bear, it's bad. I'm giving this a 1, and I assume you agree.
Yes, because I still don't know what the fuck a demon bear is, and I'm pretty sure Danny Moonstar ate the doctor, if that, in fact, the demon bear is part of her.
Okay, Brian, let's get into the story. I would classify the story in the following ways. It's confusing, muddled, and nonsensical. I think this is a movie that is very much a victim of its studio kind of getting its hands on it because, like so many superhero movies like Fantastic Four 2015, the scenes feel very detached from one another, and the way that the hospital functions literally makes no sense. And it just feels like we're checking boxes until we get to the Demon Bear. Like, it's really difficult. I watched this movie like a week ago, and it's real hard for me to even remember the plot of this movie because nothing actually matters, and this is the very definition of a studio dump. I feel very generous in giving this a 2, but understand when I say this story is the height of nonsensical. And the biggest thing for me is I think we've gotten to a point where we talk about movies and TV shows in a very extreme way of things are either the worst or the best. I don't think that this movie is as bad as some of the other superhero movies that we've discussed. I think this movie is a step above something like Fantastic Four 2015, but the story and the actual plot is as bad as anything that I have seen in some of the worst movies that we watch because it's not just bad, but it's also kind of boring too, and that is a deadly combination.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, like who built the dome? We know it's the XX Corporation, but like someone has to have some kind of superpower to build the dome, and then who's powering the dome? Couldn't you just turn the power off of the building and the dome comes off? I don't know. It's just shit like that. It's like we're gonna have a cool setup for a movie, and then we're gonna put the X-Men characters in it, and it's gonna feel like a different kind of movie, but we're gonna do it for the cheap. And then when you do it for the cheap, it turns out really cheap looking. So yeah, they just kind of just fucked up with the story so badly here. And then you end up with a 90-minute thing like this where you're kind of trying to pitch it as a horror movie, when in reality it's just five scenes in which, their fears come to light. And that's just five scenes because it's the five characters, and that's all you really see in terms of horror. Everything else is just therapy sessions. So yeah, it's just so many stupid things going on. And we mentioned like who's running the place besides Dr. Reyes, man. So just so many like loose ends and crazy questions, and yeah, just a 1 out of 10 because like the story is so nonsensical. Even for like a superhero movie, it's just like it's just one person's running this hospital with five people, and the five people are super strong and like powerful. You know what I mean? It's so fucking ridiculous. Like how I don't know. Was the comic like this? I wonder because like then the comic is just not that good either. I don't know. I know there's New Mutant fans out there, so I hate to say it, but maybe like a demon bear is not the way to go in a movie.
The Demon Bear also figures into the technical aspects of this movie. The movie looks like cheap garbage for the most part, but some of the ambiance is okay if that makes sense. And I kind of like the design of the Demon Bear, even though from a story perspective it doesn't make sense. So I think there are a couple of solid moments of technical competence. I'm not even going to say brilliance. And the one thing I will say is this movie is 94 minutes, so it did not wear out its welcome for the most part. At least it was. If this movie was 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think I would have blown a gasket. So I'm giving this a very generous score of 3.
Okay, so the score is pretty much non-existent and non-memorable, right? And then technical wise, here's the thing: we talk about there's no staff except Dr. Reyes, right? Yet in like these like flashbacks to when they're having Charlie Heaton, right? When he's flashing back to the coal mine, right? They paid like 10 extras to be in his dream. So if you could pay 10 extras to stay in there and just hit a wall, right, with a pickaxe or whatever, why can't you just hire some people in the background as staff? It's like, do you not want staff in the background? Is that supposed to be part of the eeriness? Like, is that supposed to be part of the ambiance where it just looks like it's one person running the thing and there's just like all these weird things going on? It just too distracting on that end. And the demon bear looked terrible, I thought, and because it looks like it's part of like a dream or it's like a dream or whatever, and so half of it looks like it's kind of like, like not even fully rendered, and the other half looks like kind of like demonic. And I get that, but it just looks like cheap CGI. And every time I saw it, I was just like, is this supposed to look like that? It looks like it's half CGI'd, not done yet. So I don't know. To me, it looked like incomplete CGI, shitty score, and then the colors were not even that great. They didn't have fun with any of the costumes. We don't even know what time period this takes place in. Mixed with all that, I feel like technically you just kind of half-assed it. So I think you went a little too high. For me, I'm going to go with a 1 because, again, it's just nothing stood out the way it should stood out. Like, nothing memorable with the score. Yeah, 90 minutes, sure. It's because they probably shot all this footage and were like, man, I guess we got to put a 90-minute movie together.
I think it's remarkable. I want to point out that I do not like this movie, and in fact, I was pretty bored by it most of the time. But Brian, you are putting me to shame, and that's pretty rare. It's very rare that you go in on a movie more than I do. Am I getting soft in my old age? Is that it?
I don't know. Maybe you just kind of appreciated the hospital, a hospital setting, which I get.
I mean, my highest score is a 3, so the appreciation is very low.
Yeah, and that's technical. Yeah, I guess you just like the look of the hospital because technical wise, I didn't even like the hospital look because it just looked like one of the generic hospitals that, at least I like the hospital from Glass because at least in Glass, I picture the hospital's interior like very well. In this movie, it's just like all I can picture is that fucking break room and that's it. And you just get lost in everything else.
So the legacy of this movie, how do you assess a movie like this? This movie is going to be known for its release date confusion and the fact that it came out during a pandemic. That is what this movie's legacy is. But Brian, this is the last of the 20th century X-Men movies. This is the last Marvel film to be released with Stan Lee as an executive producer. This is going to go down as one of Anya Taylor-Joy's most forgettable performances in movies. And Brian, if nothing else, it keeps up the tradition of these X-Men movies being racist. Because, as we've discussed, black characters don't do very well in this franchise. And here you have an indigenous person literally being called Pocahontas. I'm giving this a 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 1 because, man, to go out like this on the X Men franchise, it's so shameful and sad, and the fact this was on the shelf for so long, and it should have been the last chapter, and they were gonna tie in all these different things, and yeah, it just seems like a big regret to even film this movie, and I feel like the actors kind of regret it, but what can you do? So the legacy is shit. Of course, the release dates are going to be the most memorable thing about it, and the fact that it even came out. Like, I'm pretty sure people think that this movie hasn't come out yet. Like, I'm almost sure that people think that this movie hasn't come out yet because of that. So it's shitty and it's sad, and somehow I ended up with a 5, and this might be my lowest scored movie in the history of this podcast. I think could be Catwoman though.
I mean, it might be Catwoman, it might be Fantastic Four. I mean, I give this an 11. The total is 16. This has joined such movies as Catwoman and the 2015 Fantastic Four. I am certainly not going to argue that it is a bad movie. I'm not sure if I would classify it as being pile of shame worthy, but I'm certainly not going to argue that hard either, especially because of the racism that exists in this movie and the inconsistent casting, which I know we really didn't even get into because there's enough bad things to say about this movie. But what a way to go out for the 20th century X-Men movies, unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, there really isn't a lot else to say. Brian, anything else before we get to the burning questions, of which they will be mostly yes or no, so we can end this episode?
Well, it's just it doesn't add to. I mean, it doesn't help the fact that Chadwick Boseman died the movie this came out, or the day this movie came out. So it's all just kind of like a shit legacy, ending with like a really downer note, unfortunately. But that's going to be this movie's legacy because it came out the day that Chadwick Boseman died.
All right, Brian, question the first. Should Disney have released this movie or burn the negatives? I vote burn the negatives.
I would burn the negative. Well, not well. That's an old school saying nowadays. I would not have released it. So, but legally they had to. If I were Disney, I would have probably just said no and just paid the price and just paid the price literally and figuratively.
Yeah, they should not have released this. Number 2, will this be the worst movie or television show Anya Taylor-Joy ever stars in? I'm going to vote yes.
Hopefully, yes. And hopefully she makes some better decisions after this because this was a definite regret.
Number 3, we are harkening back to one of our running gags that has become an important part of the show. We ask about what these stars do with the money that they have earned from the movie. So in this case, Brian, what did Anya Taylor-Joy do with the money she earned from this movie?
She went to the mall when it was open before the pandemic and bought a really dope chess set.
That is a very good answer. I've seen some casual photos. I believe that she bought some cigs and some Starbucks. I think that's what she did. Maybe got an extra espresso or two, an extra shot, maybe some fancier cigarettes. So she may also be using that money to pay off the people who are decking her out in gorgeous wares for these various 2021 award shows. I'm not sure if you've seen some of those photos, Brian, but she's definitely going all out.
Yeah, I've seen some of those photos, and she's definitely got that fashionable taste to her. So good for her and her fashionable people that she puts around her.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So number 4, was Mr. Sinister smart to withhold his presence from this movie?
Yes, and we'll see that footage soon on YouTube in about 5 years.
Not John Hamm, Mr. Sinister himself, holding out for more money. You'll love to see it. Is this the worst X-Men movie in the franchise?
Yeah, and I don't know how it's worse than Dark Phoenix, but it's somehow worse than Dark Phoenix in terms of feeling and emotion and like just thinking about the movie after. Yeah, it's somehow worse than Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I can't believe that this movie is worse than X-Men Origins and Dark Phoenix. But here we are, Brian. That is it. We are done talking about New Mutants, and may we never speak of it again. Next week, you will have all had a chance to catch up on WandaVision. That is what we are discussing next week. We were originally going to discuss both WandaVision and the Stan Lee book, but we are probably going to do that in 2 weeks because there's a lot to talk about with WandaVision, and we will definitely get to that next week as we'll have a chance to kind of take a big picture look. We're not going to do a lot of. One of the things I don't want to do, Brian, is I don't want to talk about the conversation surrounding the show. I actually just want to talk about the show itself because I feel like so many of the conversations have been very meta, and I just want to focus on whether the show is good or not. And I think it'll be a good conversation because that's what we try to do on this podcast as much as possible is focus on the actual projects and not about the conversations surrounding them.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of hype. I've hyped it up a lot. I've watched the ins and outs on every episode, but at the true heart of it all, it's about loss and getting over loss and getting over the loss of a loved one. So it's kind of came at the right time because I think I mentioned before, but a friend of mine's father passed away due to COVID end of last year. He's been messaging me during this time watching WandaVision, and he felt like it's been therapeutic for him. So there you go.
All right, so for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening to Superhero Pantheon. We'll be back next week to talk about WandaVision.
For an X-Men movie, you would think there would be a scene with chess in it, but not even that.